Hello friends, a very warm welcome to all of you to yet another episode of Finance MCQ channel, and I am CMA Akula Sridhar. So friends, with 48 hours left for your exam, I hope your exam preparations would be on revision phase by now. So let's begin and revise some more topics today as well. So friends, the first question says we'll have to calculate the interest charge on the second year from the following data. Well, the data given is cash price is given as 58,200, down payment rupees 15,000 and 3 annual installment of rupees 15,000 each. So friends, here if a person would have opted for the installment scheme, he would have paid down payment of rupees 15,000 and 3 annual installment of rupees 15,000 each. So that will be 15,000 he would have paid for 3 years. So overall he would have paid 45,000. So friend, the sum total of this would be 60,000. So friend, if you would have opted for EMI scheme, overall you would have paid 60,000 rupees. And friends, if you would have opted for cash price method, then he would have paid on the spot the amount that is 58,200. So friends, overall he has paid 1800 rupees extra. So friend, this 1800 is nothing but the interest amount. And friends, also remember that the amount here is payable in 3 equal annual installment. So friends, for the year 1 he will have to pay interest for all the 3 years, that is the present year as well as the second year and the remaining third year. So first year he will have to pay 3 years interest, and friends, for second year he will have to pay interest for 2 years, that is the present year and the remaining third year. So second year he will have to pay interest for 2 years. Finally, for year 3 he will have to pay interest only for the remaining balance. So he will pay for one time only. So here total will be 6. So friends, here we will have to distribute this 1800 rupees interest in the ratio of 3:2:1. So friends, interest payable for first year will be 3 divided by 6 into 1800 rupees. So that will be 900 rupees. Similarly friends, for second year it will be 2 divided by 6 into 1800. So that will be 600 rupees. And friends, finally for third year it will be 1 divided by 6 into 1800. So this will be 300 rupees. So friends, in the question it is asking the interest charge for the second year. So that is 600 rupees. So the correct answer will be option B, 600 rupees. So friends, let's do one more question from this topic. So friends, here the question says is that X has acquired a car on hire purchase basis and made a down payment of rupees 1 lakh. And friends, subsequent payments are to be made are rupees 2,63,000, 1,85,000, 1,14,000 at the first year, second year and third year respectively. And friends, the interest charge is given as 14% and we have to calculate the cash price. So friends, if we summarize the data given in the question, it will be down payment rupees 1 lakh, first EMI 2,63,000, second EMI 1,85,000, third year 1,14,000 and interest at the rate 14%. So friends, here to understand this question clearly, we'll have to make a small table. So friends, as I said, in the year 3 he will have to pay interest only on the balance amount. So friends, here we'll have to solve the question in reverse order. So friends, third year EMI is 1,14,000. So friends, we'll have to calculate interest out of this EMI component. Like for example, friends, suppose the principal is 100 and the interest is 14%. So in that case, the EMI will be 114. So putting that logic in the question, the interest component will be 1,14,000 into 14 divided by 114. So friends, here the interest will be 14,000 rupees. So friend, now it will be very easy to calculate the cash price for third year. So cash price will be EMI amount minus interest. So friends, here EMI amount is 1,14,000 and interest is 14,000. So cash price will be 1 lakh rupees. And friends, for year 2, as I said, we'll have to pay interest for 2 years, that is the present year, year 2, and for next year, that is year 3. So friends, the installment, the EMI for year 2 is given as 1,85,000. So friends, here interest will be payable on this amount plus the cash purchase of year 3. So the total amount on which interest is levied is 2,85,000. So friends, similarly as we calculated interest in year 3, we'll have to calculate interest in this case also. So it will be 2,85,000 into 14 divided by 114. So here it will be 2,500. So the amount will be 35,000 rupees. So friends, cash purchase for second year will be the EMI amount minus the interest amount. So that will be 1,50,000 rupees. So friends, in the similar manner, we'll have to calculate interest for year 1 also. So for year 1, he would have paid interest for all the 3 years. That is, the first year EMI is 2,63,000 plus cash price of the remaining 2 years. That is, year 2 the cash price was 1,50,000 and for year 1 the cash price was 1 lakh rupees. So overall the interest will be levied on 5,13,000 rupees. So friends, we'll have to calculate interest from this component. So this will be 5,13,000 into 14 divided by 114. So this will be 4,500. So 4,000 multiplied by 14 will be 63,000. So friends, for cash price of third year will be the EMI minus the interest component. So that will be 2 lakh rupees. So friends, here the question is asking the cash price value. So cash price will be summation of all the 3 years CP value. So first year was 1 lakh plus 1,50,000 plus 2 lakh for first year, and friend also remember that we have also paid a down payment of rupees 1 lakh in the year 1. So overall the cash purchase price is 5,50,000. So friends, the correct option was option E, that is 5,50,000 rupees. Next question, the Payment of Bonus Act 1965 shall be applicable to every factory and every other establishment in which dash or more persons are employed on any day during an accounting year. Well, the options are 10 or more persons, 20 or more persons, 30, 50 and none of the above. So friends, remember that Payment of Bonus Act shall be applicable to every factory or establishment where 20 or more persons are employed. So friends, here Payment of Bonus Act 1965 and Payment of EPF Act 1952, in both cases both act will be applicable to every factory or establishment where 20 or more persons are employed. But friends, in case of applicability of Gratuity Act 1972, there should be minimum 10 or more persons, so that Gratuity Act will be applicable to that particular factory. Moving on. Next question, dash is an performance management approach in which a balance is sought between the objectives of the employees and the objectives of an organization. Well, the options are management by objective, management by exception, management by rule, management by result, and last option, none of the above. So friends, here the correct answer is option A, management by object. So friends, management by objective is a strategic management approach where objectives of the organization are designed in such a way so as to strike a balance between objectives of the employees and objectives of the organization, so that they are more motivated and aligned towards corporate objectives. While management of exception is a style of business management which focuses on improvement of performance of management by studying the variations from the planned objective. And friends, management by rule provides a set of standard operating procedures to be followed by organization in various scenarios to facilitate the effective achievement of organizational objectives. And friends, finally, management by results or result-based management is a government performance management framework which focuses on 3 aspects. First, the quality of public services, then optimization of available means and resources, and finally it focuses on accountability. Moving on. Next question, a factory requires 1500 units per month. Cost of each unit is given as rupees 27. Cost of placing order is rupees 150 and material carrying charges work out to be 20% rupees. So friends, here we'll have to calculate the economic order quantity. So friends, the formula for calculating economic order quantity is square root of 2 into annual consumption into cost of placing order divided by cost of holding the inventory. So friends, if we put the data in this formula, it will be 2 into annual consumption. So here we have the per month consumption. To calculate the annual consumption, we'll have to just multiply this value with 12. And friends, cost of placing order is given as rupees 150. And friends, cost of holding inventory will be calculated as 20% of rupees 27. So friends, if we solve this, we will get 2 into 18,000 into 150 divided by 5.4. To remove this decimal, we'll add 1 0 here. So friends, if we solve this, we'll get square root of 10 lakh. So that will be 1000 units. So friends, the correct answer will be option C, that is 1000 units. Moving on. So friends, in the next question, we'll have to calculate the cost of equity from the following data. Well, the data says weighted average cost of capital is given as 12%, capital structure comprises of 75% debt and 25% equity, while cost of debt is given as 10% and tax rate is given as 20%. So friends, to solve the question like this, first of all, we should know the formula for calculating weighted average cost of capital. So friends, weighted average cost of capital is calculated by debt percent in the overall capital multiplied by cost of debt multiplied by 1 minus tax rate plus equity percent in the overall capital into cost of equity. So friends, if we put the data in this formula, debt percent is given as 0.75, that is 75%, into cost of debt is given as 0.10 and 1 minus tax rate is given as 0.20 plus equity percent is given as 0.25, and we have to calculate the cost of equity, and weighted average cost of capital is already given as 12%. So friends, if we solve this, this will be 0.75 into 0.80 plus 0.25 into cost of equity. So friend, this value will be 0.06 plus 0.25 into cost of equity. So friends, again solving this, we will get 0.06 is equal to 0.25 into cost of equity. So friends, cost of equity will be 0.06 divided by 0.25. So friends, if we solve this, it will be 0.24. So that will be option B. So the correct answer will be option B, that says cost of equity is 24%. So friends, let's do one more question from the similar topic. And friends, here the question says a company is thinking to purchase a machinery for rupees 20,000 and the machinery is expected to generate cash flow of rupees 5,000 each for next 3 years and can be sold at rupees 10,000 at the end of third year. And friends, here discounted cash flow rate is given as 10% and the values are for year 1 0.90, 0.82 and year 3 it is 0.75, and we'll have to suggest whether the company should go ahead and purchase the machinery. So friends, if we summarize the data given in the question, the data we have the investment value of the company, that is 20,000, and cash flows, that is 5,000 for next 3 years. Residual value is given as 10,000 and that will be accrued at the end of third year, and we'll have to calculate NPV so as to suggest the company whether it should go ahead or not. So friends, here again we'll have to make a small table for clarity. First table will show the year, second column will show the cash flow, third column will show the discounted cash flow value which is calculated at the rate of 10%, and finally the last column will show the present value. So friends, in the year 1, what we will get is we'll get a cash flow of rupees 5,000, and friends, for year 1 the discounted cash flow is given as 0.90. So friends, if we solve this, we will get the present value as rupees 4,500. Friends, for the second year again there is an inflow of cash amounting to rupees 5,000. However, for second year the discounted cash flow value is given as 0.82. So friends, if we multiply 5,000 by 0.82, we will get rupees 4,100. And friends, similarly for 3 years, third year, we'll get a cash flow of rupees 5,000 and the discounted flow value is 0.75. So friends, if you multiply cash flow with the discounted cash flow value, we will get 3,750. So friends, apart from these cash flows, at the third year end, we'll also get the residual value once we sell the investment, and the value of the residual is rupees 10,000. And friends, for the discounted cash value for third year, we have already seen is 10.5. So if we solve this, we will get 7,500. So friends, summation of all the present value will be rupees 19,850. So friend, if we compare this value with the initial investment, that was 20,000 rupees, so the value is coming in negative of rupees 150. So friends, here, since the NPV is negative, so the company should not go ahead with the purchase. So friends, the correct answer here will be option C, which says no, the company should not purchase the machinery as the NPV is negative. Moving on. So friends, next question says contractionary fiscal policy is helpful during inflationary phase, deflationary phase, stable economy, both A and B, and last option, none of the above. So friends, remember that contractionary fiscal policy will be opted by government when it either cuts the spending or raises tax, basically to contract the economy or to reduce the amount available for business and consumers to spend. And friends, this is used in case of inflation where prices are rising. So friends, here the correct answer will be option A, that is inflationary phase. So friends, on the other hand, expansionary policies are used by government when the economy is experiencing a recession or a deflationary phase. So here, government will increase its spending or cut down taxes so that people are left with more money to spend or invest, which will increase the aggregate demand and thus curb recession. Moving on. Next question, dash means a prospectus in respect of which the securities or class of securities included therein are issued for subscription in one or more issues over a certain period of time without issue of further prospect. So friends, the correct answer is option B, shelf prospectus. So friends, let's study all these types of prospectus one by one. So friends, first is deemed prospectus. So friends, section 25 of Companies Act 2013 says that any document by which a company makes an offer to the public will be deemed to be a prospectus. Friends, next option is shelf prospectus. So friends, the provision of shelf prospectus is given under section 31 of Companies Act 2013. So friends, when a company has to issue securities for subscription in one or more issues over a certain period of time, then in that case it will be very hectic for the company to issue a prospectus every time. So friends, in that case the company will issue a shelf prospectus. So friends, shelf prospectus will remain valid for a specified time period during which the offer for securities will be made by the company. And what is red herring prospectus? Friends, the provisions of red herring prospectus is contained under section 32 of Companies Act 2013. So friends, red herring prospectus is basically an incomplete prospectus and does not have complete particulars like the price of the securities offered or quantum of the securities issued. And friends, this prospectus, that is red herring prospectus, is to be filed with Registrar of Companies at least 3 days prior to the opening of subscription. And what is abridged prospectus? Friends, abridged prospectus is defined under section 2 subsection 1 of Companies Act 2013. So friends, abridged prospectus is basically a memorandum which contains salient feature of the main prospectus. And friends, it has to be enclosed with the application form issued for the purchase of securities. Moving on. Next question is, a threat to commit suicide may amount to, option A says coercion, option B fraud, option C misrepresentation, option D undue influence, and last option, none of the above. So friends, one of the basic essence of a valid contract is mutual consent. So that means the consent should be free and it should not be affected by coercion, undue influence, misrepresentation, fraud or mistake. So friends, let's understand all these one by one. So first one is coercion. So friends, coercion is an act of threatening another person to obtain his will, and it is also unlawful. So here A is threatening to commit suicide, so which is unlawful and is also threatening. So friends, here the correct answer is option A. And friends, undue influence happens in a situation where one person is able to influence the free will of other person by using his position and authority over the other person, like in case of the relationship of parent child, master servant, debtor creditor, employer employee, etc. Now let's take an example of undue influence. Like suppose a teacher forces his students to sell his brand new watch at a very nominal price to get good grades in the examination. So in this situation, the consent of the student is affected by the undue influence of his teacher. And what is fraud? Friends, fraud is an act of deceiving other person intentionally where he knows that the statement made by him is not true. And while misrepresentation is a misstatement made innocently when the person making the representation believes that the statement made by him is true, which subsequently turns out to be false. Like for example, suppose Shyam sells a car to Rajesh believing that his car is in a good condition. However, after purchase, Rajesh suffers a loss of repair of car. So friends, this amounts to misrepresentation as Shyam at the time of purchase believes that his car is working properly, but that was not actually so. Moving on, next question. GST registration is mandatory for any business involved in the supply of goods whose turnover in a financial year exceeds dash for normal category states. So friends, here the correct answer is option C, which says 40 lakh rupees. So friends, for normal category states, the limit for registration is 40 lakh rupees, while for special category states, which includes our northeastern states and states like J&K, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, etc., here the turnover limit is rupees 20 lakh. And friends, for business involved in supply of services, the limit is rupees 20 lakh for normal category states and rupees 10 lakh for special category states. Moving on, next question. CIBIL in banking relates to option A, organization involved to investigating tax evasion cases. CIBIL is a database to publish consumer price index. Option C says CIBIL is a group of countries tied up to avoid money laundering. And last option, it's a credit information database used for lending decision. So friends, here the correct answer is option D, that is CIBIL is used as a credit information database for lending decisions. So friends, CIBIL stands for Credit Information Bureau India Limited, which is a company that maintains database of all the credit related activities of a companies as well as individuals and includes credit cards and loans. So friends, that is why when we apply for a loan in a bank, they will first check our CIBIL score, and on the basis of CIBIL score, they will decide the rate of interest and the quantum of loan to be given to each individual. So friends, for more practice of such MCQs, please visit our website financemcq.in, where the entire technical syllabus is brought to you in MCQ format for practice. And friends, this technical syllabus is very important for your selection, as it covers 100 marks out of the total 150 marks of the BHEL Supervisor Trainee Finance exam. So friend, this website financemcq.in presents 2000 plus MCQs covering accountancy, business law, costing, economics, income tax, GST, management in subject wise or topic wise format for you to practice. And friends, this content of financemcq.in is prepared by professionals such as chartered accountant or cost and management accountant, which gives this course a professional edge and in-depth coverage of the entire technical syllabus. Friends, we have added explanations for correct answers wherever required for conceptual clarity, and apart from this, there is an email support for clarification of doubts raised by candidates while practicing this contents. And friends, the system of financemcq.in is designed in such a way with timer facility so as to give the candidates a real exam like environment. So do visit financemcq.in and practice for your technical syllabus well. So in the end, friends, thank you all for watching this MCQ series and extending your support to us. So on behalf of the entire team of Finance MCQ, we wish all the applicants a great success in the exam. So all the best, friends, and take care.